Welcome to Hashtag Trending, the weekend edition. I'm your host, Jim Love. On this long weekend, I thought we'd try something a little different. I find that when I break my daily routine and get some time away, I can take a moment and reflect to see the bigger picture and use that perspective to look forward. It's a chance to think strategically. So this weekend, that's what I want to do with the issue that's dominating technology and business, artificial intelligence. What I've prepared is more of a documentary than the interview show you're used to, and I've done it in two parts. The first part is a history of AI, taking it from its earliest times up to the launch of ChatGPT. It's part historical, part philosophical, but I also think it lays a foundation for understanding our interest and pursuit of AI and our fascination with it. The second part, or second episode, is really more in the current day and is down to the practicalities of business and technology. I'll look at why what is called generative AI is transformational. Those of you who are fans of the show will know I'm enthusiastic about technology and I love it, but I've been in this game for 40 years and I try not to be caught up in the hype about any product, service, or development. So I'm not going to try to predict the future. All I'm going to do is talk to you about this like it was a scatter diagram. You put a lot of points on a 2x2 matrix, and sometimes they're all over the place. Other times they start to show a pattern, and they point in a direction. Generative AI is like that. It seems like it's all over the map, but when you connect the dots and draw the line, it leads you to what seems to me to be inevitable, one of the biggest transformations on how we work and how we live in human history. And not only is the change inevitable, but the pace of that change and the impact of that change may be greater than we possibly could imagine. So in our second episode, we're going to take stock of what's happened in the less than 2 years since ChatGPT was launched. And we'll look at what will happen over the coming months with a focus on what that will do primarily in business, but also in our lives. It will still take time for changes to work their way through, but it will be less than you might think. And change, our ability to adapt, takes time as well. So no hype, just drawing a line to the inevitable and drawing your attention to the fact we need to start planning now. Here's our first episode. The Road to Artificial Intelligence. Since civilization began, humans have been looking outward, presuming that there was a greater intelligence that ran our world. In our earliest days, this conceptualization lay in the world of the mystical and the religious. We saw what happened not as random events, but as driven by outside mystical forces. As our knowledge of the world grew, we evolved on two different paths. One retained this spiritual and mystic idea of things that happened to us from an outside force. Another path, however, became what we knew as mathematics and science. The universe was understandable and followed rules that we as humans could not only understand, but rules we could manipulate and control and maybe even use to dominate our natural world. In many cases, and this is one of the major elements of human intelligence, we've been able to hold both of these ideas simultaneously. A spiritual entity or a greater purpose and the power of our minds to leverage the rules of the universe so we could be creators in our own right. In the world of the Greek philosophers, we found not just geometry and philosophy, we also find the first defined concept of an artificial intelligence. Talos was a brass, human-like creature that stood 30 meters tall and protected the island of Crete from invaders. Granted, the creator of Talos was supposed to be the god Hephaestus, but the point was that a mechanical, intelligent creation was possible. And within this creation was the idea that an artificial human intelligence was also possible. And even though Talos was created by the gods, he was, in this same story, destroyed by humans. Curiously, Talos' weakness was that he had only one vein running through him, and that was plugged by a single nail. And when that nail was pulled, Talos' power leaked away. Sounds a lot like someone managed to pull the power cord, doesn't it? Or maybe a mythological Ethernet cable? This concept of being able to become gods ourselves and create a mechanical intelligence has never left our consciousness. Over the millennia, it would appear time and time again. But our passion, our reach, has always exceeded our grasp. We had the desire, but not the ability. And then, almost 2,000 years later, in the middle of an industrial and scientific revolution, we started to see the possibility. We were building machines of incredible complexity, but they were always just that, sophisticated machines. They couldn't think like humans. Despite all our mechanical prowess, we had little more than very, very sophisticated toys. But the idea of a mechanical intelligence still captured our imagination. In 1770, Wolfgang von Kempelen created what he called the Mechanical Turk to impress the Empress of Austria. This creation was able to play an incredibly competitive game of chess against human opponents. But it was, alas, a fake. There was actually someone hiding in the Mechanical Turk, controlling his moves. The mechanical creatures and our ability to fool people with those were within our grasp. Mechanical intelligence was not. But in 1784, J.H. Mueller, an engineer in the Hessian army, devised and built a machine that could add numbers. From that, he put together the principles of what he called a difference machine and described this in a book published in 1786. Unfortunately, he was unable to find funding to build this machine. But the idea was later taken up by Englishman Charles Babbage. Babbage was able to sell this vision of a difference engine to the British government. The difference engine was not simply a mechanical device to add or subtract. It could do much more complex calculations and ultimately could produce the types of tables that took an enormous amount of time and work for humans to calculate. With that as the promise, Babbage managed to get an astronomical amount of funding, £17,000, about $3 million in today's money, but an amazing amount in those days. But although his theoretical basis appeared sound, the intricacies and complexities of actually building this machine were beyond the technical tools of his time. Ultimately, he failed, and his funding stopped. But as Babbage was working on this device, he met the daughter of Lord Byron, Ada Lovelace. Lovelace was a brilliant mathematician who wrote 7 notes, or what we'd call scientific papers, and the 7th described an algorithm designed to be carried out by a machine, the first computer program. But Lovelace also envisioned the ability of these algorithms to go beyond mathematical calculation or simple number crunching. With the collapse of Babbage's work, this idea remained a dream for more than a century and a half. In the 1930s, a number of ideas came together at once. Work in neurology showed that our brains were electronic networks that used electrical impulses to create conscious thought. Other work in information theory brought together the idea we could understand information in a way that would allow it to be expressed in digital signals and manipulated by algorithms. But it took the genius of Alan Turing to not only come up with a theory of computation, but to also develop a mechanical device that could execute these calculations and give us the first inklings of artificial intelligence. Turing proposed a machine that could learn the same way a human child learns. He even worked out how we could measure the success of that learning. If you had this machine that learned, and you put it in another room and connected it to a person who didn't know whether this was a human or a machine, if it could fool them into thinking it was human, we would have achieved artificial intelligence. Hence, the Turing test was born. Turing also argued that with sufficient memory and speed, these newly developed digital computers could accomplish this. So the first artificial intelligence programs were written in 1951 to run on a Ferranti Mark I machine at the University of Manchester. This early program could play checkers. The field of artificial intelligence research was officially launched in the year 1956, and the first working artificial intelligence programs were written in 1951 to run on this Ferranti Mark I machine at the University of Manchester. This included a checkers playing program, one of the earliest AI programs. But by 1955, Alan Newell, Herbert Simon, and Cliff Shaw at the Rand Corporation developed the Logic Theorist program, which was designed to mimic human problem-solving and was able to prove mathematical theorems. This is considered one of the first examples of the symbolic approach to AI. The field of artificial intelligence research was officially launched in the year 1956. By the mid-1950s, the idea of artificial neural networks, or ANNs, were a proven concept, and a way of processing called a perceptron was developed. The perceptron learns by adjusting the weights and biases based on the training data using an algorithm called the perceptron learning rule. In 1957, scientist Herbert Simon declared victory. He said, "It's not my aim to surprise or shock you, but the simplest way I can summarize is to say that there are now in the world machines that think, that learn, and that create. Moreover, their ability to do these things is going to increase rapidly until, in a visible future, the range of problems they can handle will be coextensive with the range to which the human mind has been applied." However, like Charles Babbage before him, Simon underestimated the complexity of the task given the computational power of the time. Despite a lot of work, by 1969, it was taken as a given that computers lacked the processing power to train useful neural networks. And we enter then what some have called the AI winter. Just like it had for Charles Babbage centuries before, funding, at least in Western countries, dried up, and all but a few determined researchers moved on to other disciplines which were more likely to advance their academic careers. But things were changing in the world of digital computers. What came to be known as Moore's Law described this, as the processing power of machines roughly doubled every 2 years, and what we know as machine learning was born. Given enough time and computational resources, these new algorithms could learn to recognize pictures, interpret handwriting, and find patterns in vast amount of data that enabled a growing number of applications. Still, it was largely restricted to huge corporations or governments because even though running the algorithms was possible, the cost of training and processing was incredible. The training was not only costly, but it also required human supervision. It was even called supervised learning. Every error and variation had to be detected and reported, and the weights changed in the model. But then, from about 2006 onward, Geoffrey Hinton at a university in Canada, along with others around the world, were working on using neural networks on what would be called deep learning. These were experiments in unsupervised learning, in taking the principles of language to what would be called natural language processing, and even attempting to deal with understanding and reacting to sentiment and human emotions. And in 2011, a computer did the unthinkable. For years, people had been aware that a computer could beat humans at chess, but that could be explained. Chess was a game with a large number of potential strategies, but these could be documented and expressed as patterns and rules. But this time, a computer beat 2 world champions at the popular TV game show Jeopardy!
This is Jeopardy! The IBM Challenge!
Here we go. Brad, if you're ready, make your first choice.
Let's take alternate meanings for 200, Alex.
4-letter word for a vantage point or a belief. Brad.
What is a view?
This didn't involve simply recalling facts or having rule-based strategies. This involved understanding the nuances of language. The computer, known as Watson, stumbled at first.
What is leg?
No, I'm sorry, I can't accept that.
What is 1920s?
No.
What is chic?
No, sorry.
But eventually, Watson hit its stride. Here's how one of the observers described it.
Watson went on a tear.
Watson.
Who is Franz Liszt?
You are right.
What is violin?
Good.
Who is the church lady?
Yes. Watson.
What is narcolepsy?
You are right, and with that you move to 36,000.
But it wasn't just about knowing the answers. Watson had to have a strategy. Here's how one of his team described it.
The category is 19th century novelists.
What Watson wants to do then is preserve the lead, not take a big risk, especially with Final Jeopardy, because just like for humans, Final Jeopardy is hard for Watson.
Now we come to Watson, who is Bram Stoker, and the wager. Hello, 17,973, and a two-day total of 77,000.
Ken Jennings, the 74-time winner of Jeopardy, quipped, "Quiz show contestants may be the first job to be made redundant by Watson, but I'm sure it won't be the last." By 2012, computer power had continued its enormous growth, and the idea of a huge networked intelligence was not imagination, but part of our life experience, with the internet no longer being a novelty, but being a core part of our businesses and increasingly our personal lives. Machine learning was being integrated into industry and finance, manufacturing, and other areas. In 2016, Google's DeepMind managed to defeat Lee Sedol, one of the world's top professional Go players, in a 5-game match. Go is an enormously complicated strategy game with more moves than there may be atoms in the universe. I'm not sure. But this was a real accomplishment. AI was breaking through barriers and seeming to become even more human in its capabilities. And a new development would take it to yet another level. It had a curious name, Transformers. The Transformer architecture was first introduced in the paper Attention is All You Need by the researchers at Google Brain. This new approach allowed Google's AI to achieve phenomenal results in natural language processing. AI could converse in a way that many thought would have satisfied the requirements of the Turing test. And with this new development, Google was on its way to becoming the dominant company in AI. But the idea of Google, a massive company that already had a virtual monopoly in search, internet advertising, and that had a massive share of the internet browser market, the idea that this one company could also dominate in AI was concerning to some. And it was at this time that Elon Musk and a man we'd get to know as Sam Altman started a not-for-profit company to do research into AI. That company was called OpenAI, and it was about to leverage this new transformer architecture and some of its own innovations to take AI to yet another new level and capture the attention of the world. Why was the transformer architecture such a radical departure? I thought, to answer that, I'm going to go right to the source. I asked ChatGPT herself, what is the transformer architecture?
The transformer architecture is a way of building AI that helps it understand language. Imagine it like a super smart system for reading and understanding text. It's special because it can look at an entire sentence or even a paragraph all at once instead of one word at a time. This lets it get the big picture and the details simultaneously, making it really good at figuring out the meaning of words in context. It's like having the ability to read a book and instantly understand not just the words, but also how everything is connected. This breakthrough has powered a lot of advancements in AI, helping systems to translate languages, answer questions, and even write stories more accurately than ever before.
And I get how this works on language, but why does this suddenly also help us with multimodal or pictures?
Great question. The transformer architecture isn't just good with words, it's also great at understanding relationships and patterns. So when it comes to pictures or combining pictures with text, what we call multimodal, transformers use their ability to look at the big picture and the details to understand both what's in the image and how it relates to the text. For instance, if you have a photo and a caption, a transformer can understand how the words in the caption relate to the objects and scenes in the photo. This ability comes from its skill in grasping complex relationships, which is why it works well across different types of data, not just language. It's like being able to read a book and understand the story, but also being able to look at a picture and understand the story it tells, all using the same skill set. This has opened up new possibilities in AI for things like better image recognition, creating art, or even generating descriptions for photos, making technology more versatile.
But you're definitely a machine. You're not a person.
That's right. I'm a machine, specifically an AI developed by OpenAI. I don't have personal experiences or feelings. but I'm here to provide information and help to the best of my ability. Is there something specific you'd like to know more about?
No, I'm just trying to get this across to my audience as to the potential that AI presents to the world versus where we are today.
Got it. That's a compelling topic. Today, AI can write stories, assist in medical diagnoses, improve efficiency in manufacturing, and even help tackle climate change by optimizing energy usage. But we're just scratching the surface. In the future, AI could revolutionize how we learn by providing personalized education, make scientific discoveries faster, enhance our ability to understand complex systems, and much more. The key thing is, as AI evolves, it's crucial to focus on ethical development and use, ensuring it benefits society as a whole. This balance between potential and responsible use is central to the conversation on AI's role in our future. How do you plan to present this to your audience?
I'm doing a show, and you're actually being interviewed for it right now.
That's really exciting. I'm glad to be a part of your show. If there's anything specific you'd like to dive deeper into or any other questions you have in mind for your audience, feel free to ask. I'm here to help with any information or insights you need.
No, thanks. I think you've said a lot, and we may bring you back in the second episode.
I'm glad to hear that you found the information helpful. It sounds like you're working on something really interesting. If you have more questions later or need insights for your next episode, I'll be here. Best of luck with your show, and I look forward to potentially joining you again. Have a great day.
That's our show for today, The Road to Artificial Intelligence. We hope you enjoyed it. In our next episode, we're going to look at AI today, where we are, where we're going, and what we might want to think about. Music for today's show comes from Alex Grohl, Lexan Music, and Soul Prod Music. The show was made possible with the sponsorship of Performance Advantage, a Canadian firm specializing in AI strategy and delivery. You can find them at padv.ca. This has been #Trending, the Weekend Edition. I'm your host, Jim Love. Have a great weekend.